This conference will now be recorded.
Well, let's see. On agenda item number 3, quasi judicial hearing to consider the variance request for 5920 North Ocean Boulevard.
Chair Hendon, is it possible we could do the roll call first?
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Member Slow?
Here.
Member Martell?
Here.
Member Z?
Here.
Vice Chair Bingham?
Here.
And Chair Hendon.
Here. Okay, if you'd rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, old business approval of the minutes from October 16th. Approved, second by Mr. Sloat.
Can I also get you guys to use your microphones, please?
Okay.
Just make sure they're on red and they're hot.
Oh,
I'm sorry. We have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of October 16th by Betty Bingham, seconded by Robert Sloat. Do you have to take roll or can we just say, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Second item of business is approval dates for the 2025 calendar year. You all have them?
Yes.
Okay.
January 15th, February 19th,
Yes,
March 19th, April 16th.
correct.
I approve the meeting dates for 2000.
The only item of discussion, we typically don't have an August meeting because of the extensive travel. It's hard to get a quorum for the summer. I moved for the approval of the meeting dates, less the August date. If as long as we take the August date off the calendar now, then people know they can apply for variance accordingly, either the month before or the month after. Any discussion?
No, I think that's a good plan. Is if everybody's, I'm in town, but I understand that most people are seasonal, so that's fine with me.
Betty, is that okay?
I'll second it. I think Christmas, it's all that close to Christmas, December 17th.
That's good.
We're typically around. Well, are you going?
I won't know. I'll go.
Okay. So you're seconding my motion?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the meeting dates for 2025 are approved, save for the August 20th date. Okay. The proceedings are now called to order. We'll start with 5920 North Ocean Boulevard. Can you please read the agenda item title?
An application submitted by Helen Asir as owner for a parcel of property located at 5920 North Ocean Boulevard, Ocean Ridge, Florida, 33435, requesting a variance from the provisions of the Land Development Code, Chapter 67, Building and Building Regulations, Article 3, Division 1, variance from Section 67-37, roof systems, which Section B1 limits the second floor tie beam height to 24 foot to allow a total height of 28 foot. The applicant is also requesting a 2-foot height variance to allow an increase in usable flat roof area from 14 foot to 16 foot as required in Section 64-1 F3.
Can I ask a quick question? For legal purposes, do we need to amend the agenda since we're flipping or?
I can't hear you.
You can.
Okay.
You can just proceed. It's an informality.
Okay, that's fine, sorry.
At this time, any ex parte communication should be either disclosed by identifying the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, or any correspondence be provided to the town clerk and made part of the public record. In addition, each member of the board may identify the existence of any investigations or site visits he or she has conducted, or any expert opinions received, and disclose any conflicts of interest on the matter.
I made a site visit to the property, but did not say anything to the owner about my feeling and my observation.
I visited several people that live on Harbor Drive, both south and north.
Harbor Drive or,
What,
okay,
Well, we're on the,
we're on the Ocean Boulevard.
the ocean. No, I visited that site also.
Okay, yeah,
Almost first.
we're going on
Okay,
board
okay.
because of who was
Okay,
present.
sorry.
But you visited the site?
I parked in front of the gate and looked at the site,
Okay.
and I went around behind the back of the site of Thompson.
I have not made a recent visit, but this parcel was brought before the Board of Adjustment in the past, and I had made a site visit at that time.
correct. I didn't visit the site at all this time. The last different variance, I went to visit the site, but not at this point at all.
No ex
No,
parte.
no, okay. We'll then proceed with the hearing on this matter. Will the town clerk please swear in the witnesses?
Will anyone wishing to speak on the item please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? When you are called to speak, please state your name and address clearly for the record and whether or not you have been sworn in.
The town staff will now make its presentation on this matter.
Good morning, Chairman, board members, Corey O'Gorman, Town Planner. As is indicated in the agenda, this is a variance to the proposed home at 5920 North Ocean Boulevard. There are actually two variances being requested. One is for the overall height of the tie beam for the second floor, and the other is for the tie beam height and the height for the usable the flat roof usable area that is essentially an extension of the second floor area. The staff report provides an overview of the criteria, the justification from the application, and the indication on the two variances in the application. The one for overall height indicates conditions related to the design of the building, the need for mechanical equipment, and reduced ceiling height essentially within the building. The variance request for the flat roof usable area indicates conditions related to views of the ocean. The evaluation of the criteria relative to the justification provided by the application is that neither of the variances meet the criteria for granting variance. The staff recommends consideration of the information provided by the application, the information in the staff report, your testimony this morning, and make a decision based on your judgment. I'm happy to answer any questions, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. At this time, any other member of the public who wishes to submit relevant information to the board may come forward and speak for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Please indicate whether you are for or against the project, or neither for or against the project.
I think, Mr. Chair, we want to hear from the applicant, and then we'll call for any public comment. Thank you.
Fine. The applicant will now make its presentation on this matter.
Good morning, members of the board, town staff, town attorney, and members of the community. Thank you for taking the time with us today to provide us the opportunity to present our request. We appreciate your dedication and effort to doing this, and as you said, this is the second time we are here before you. As residents of Ocean Ridge, we are constantly reminded of how beautiful our town is and how fortunate we are to live here. And also its small town values, which foster such a sense of neighborliness, cooperation, and pride. And we understand and respect the importance of preserving these qualities. And it is with this spirit in mind that we bring our request before you. The variances we seek are pretty modest. We are requesting an increase of about 48 inches in the tie beam so that we could accommodate our MEP and also have a beam, a structural beam to support the structure. This came about because after we got the last zoning approval and the planning commission approval, we went back to the drawing board to prepare the structural drawings. And at that point, we were told that with a 24-inch, 24 feet tie beam, and with our the structural beam that we needed, and to accommodate the MEP, we need to have at least a 2 or 3 feet space. So which kind of and the hardship we are requesting is that people, I mean, the town code allows for slope roofs of 36 feet. And when you have a sloped roof, you have that additional space to accommodate your MEP, but we don't have that, and that is a hardship, and which limits our floor size and also gives an appearance of being squished. It's kind of little. The whole appearance is squished. So as we've said, the special conditions and circumstances which exist due to the structural demands of a flat roof, which requires a 2-foot structural beam to maintain stability and to accommodate MEP installations. The second condition for the variance is that these are not conditions created by us, in the sense that the ordinance restricts our height to 24 feet. And the need for this additional height arises from our the requirement of the flat roof design for a proper structural stability and MEP functionality. The condition is not the result of our modifications itself, but stems from standard architectural and engineering requirements necessitating the additional height to meet the code and safety requirements while achieving functional living space. We also feel that no special privilege will be conferred upon us because there are other properties with flat roofs which have been granted similar variances. For instance, 5006 Old Ocean Boulevard and 6301 North Ocean Boulevard, establishing a precedent for the type of minimal height adjustments to ensure structural integrity. A literal interpretation of the 24-foot height restriction would create an undue hardship on us by limiting the ability to design a functional, code-compliant residence. Properties with slope roof in the district are permitted to reach 36 feet, allowing for greater MEP and living space flexibility. Without this variance, the height restriction would deprive this property of reasonable interior space and functionality. The requested 48 inches is the minimum adjustment necessary to ensure that the building can support our structural and MEP systems effectively without compromising the architectural intent. we don't seek any other height. And the use of on the second floor, we have the balconies or the usable space. If we raise the height of the tie beam by 4 inches, by 48 inches, we would need to increase the height of that, otherwise the balconies would be kind of short. And there would not be any point to doing that. We have shown in the last pages the elevation as to how it's going to look. I think it's page 17 or 18. Yeah, so this is our elevation, the east and the west elevation of the property. And as you could see, there's not too much of a difference from what it was before, and the elevation itself. And we've also submitted the plans for, where is that? For 5006 Old Ocean Boulevard, which is a 3-story structure, and their tie beam is at about 26 or 27 feet. And as the same as 6301 North Ocean Boulevard, which has a roof elevation at 31.2 and a second floor tie beam which exceeds the 24 feet requirement. Based on this, we seek the variance in the increase of the tie beam by 48 inches and a request for the usable area variance from 14 feet to 16. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, any other member of the public who wishes to submit relevant information to the board may come forward and speak for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Please indicate whether you are for or against the project or neither for or against the project.
Terry Brown, Harvard Drive South. It's not the project that I would object to. It's the process by which the project is coming to this board and to plan review. That you approved one variance because of the north wall, and now they're coming back in for 2 more variances. Under the substantial improvement code, if you exceed that threshold of 50%, there's no discussion in any of these documents about how much this project's going to cost, how much their property is appraised at. If you look at the public record, you'll see that yourself. Clearly, in my mind, they're going to exceed that 50%. So they're coming in the back door to get approval, and they're avoiding that part of the code. Under the substantial, this is not in a floodplain, but substantial improvement code applies to all structures when there's been sufficient proposal to improve it, and they're going to exceed it, in my mind. Now, maybe someone has a document somewhere that says they won't exceed it. But that's not the case. I haven't seen any document. So if they reach that threshold, everything they do on that structure and that property must meet current code. That's the rule. That's the law. It's a Florida state statute. It's in our code as well, and every other municipality and county has it. So this is my concern, is that they're sort of coming through, getting the project that they want, and I'm not talking about style or appearance or any of that, by coming to you for 2 more variances. It should occur just the opposite. The project should go to plan review, and they should inform the plan review people how much it's going to cost, and does it exceed that threshold? And then come back and they'll say, okay, you can go again at variance. But there's no discussion of that. So you'd be participating in violating that ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Staff will now make its final comments.
Mr. Chairman, the only final comment that I would have is regarding variances that were granted to this section of the code. The flat roof section of the code was adopted in 2022. And to the best of my knowledge, based on research, there have been no variances granted since that time. It is possible that the homes that were pointed out in the presentation were done prior to some of the codes that are in place today. But to the best of my knowledge, there were no variances granted.
I'm aware of that. Yeah, okay. Does the applicant have any final comments to make?
So the only reason why we're here today is, as he pointed out, that we're here coming through the back door. It's not true. We were very happy with the variance that you granted us. We went to our engineer to draw up the plans to go to the next step, and we encountered these problems with the structural integrity of the whole project, the beams, the MEP. That hardship is real, because if we had, when the ordinance was passed in 2022 for a flat roof, they didn't consider that they had a separate ordinance for a slope roof of 36 feet, and they didn't allow us to have that in the 24 feet, to have that kind of a special tie beam to be that we could use a tie beam at higher than what is required by the 36 feet. So the hardship was encountered after we came here, and we went back and we started to put the structural drawings together. And then we realized that in order to have a really strong structure, we needed to have the space and to accommodate these beams on both the floors, and also to have access to all the MEP. And that's the only reason why we're here today. And there's nothing sinister or as he explains. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your time, and we hope that this will be a good Christmas gift for us.
Thank you. Do any members of the board have any questions for the staff or applicant or anyone who has spoken on the site?
Is this the only alternative to get the house built that they want? And this is sort of like creeping paralysis, in my opinion, but could they not build a structure in the ordinances of Ocean Ridge?
In my
Or do they
opinion,
need
yes,
that
yes,
extra
ma'am.
4 feet height?
In answer to your question, in my opinion, they could. The issue that the applicant is pointing out is that because of the demands of mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems within the building, it reduces the overall ceiling height. So they could build the house within the code. It would just reduce the overall ceiling height. And from a planning standpoint, reducing or an allowance for an increased ceiling height and increasing the overall height of the tie beam is inappropriately addressed through a variance and more appropriately addressed through a code revision. So if there's the need for increased overall ceiling height in flat roof structures, that should be done through a code revision. They make a good point that there is additional space within the roof structure for a pitched roof, and that's certainly true. However, there is sufficient space within the overall 24 feet to accommodate living space as well as the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and the structural needs as the code is currently written. Does that help?
If they can't get the extra 4 feet, how high would their ceilings be?
16 and 12 feet, I think, according to the.
Well, an overall 24, if you took 2 feet from the second floor and 2 feet from the first floor ceiling, you have an overall ceiling height for both floors of 20 feet. So you could distribute that from between the first and the second floor. So if you wanted to have the consistent from first to the second, you have 2 10-foot ceilings. If you want the first floor to be slightly higher, you could have a 12-foot and an 8-foot ceiling.
So according to the plans, we have a 14-foot first floor and 10 feet on the second floor. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're using 2 feet
And
for.
just sit there. Have that on record.
And that's our engineers.
We are using 2 feet for the MEP and the beams to run all of them and be able to close them with the ceiling soffit and into the soffit. So we need 2 feet. So that's why we're going to the 16 feet on the first one, giving a ceiling height of 14 feet. And then on the second floor, we're going to a 12 feet, giving a ceiling height of 10 feet.
Can you state your name on the record for me?
Say that again?
State your name for the record.
My name is Naomi Barrera.
Sure.
A couple of quick questions, because I'm not familiar with it. I understand the total height, 24 versus 28. Could you explain the 16-foot? What is, where and what is that?
The 16-foot request is for the flat reusable area. And when the code changed in 2022, it allowed for a percentage of the flat roof, 15%, to be as usable area, sort of balcony space, if you will.
Got it. Okay.
And the current height of that, the maximum height of that would be 14 feet under the current code for the tie beam.
So that would be like the height of the balcony wall? Is that what it's like?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Other quick questions are, I don't know the exact address, but at the south end on Old Ocean by, what is it, Turtle Creek, those
Turtle Beach.
Turtle Beach.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a 3-story house there. It's got the garage on the first floor and 2 stories above that.
That is the one we pointed out
Okay.
to.
And that was built prior to 22 is what you were saying. Okay, thank you. And my last question is the comment made by Mr. Brown. If it was, does that hold with respect to this property? If you look back and looked at the entire improvement cost, which would be the cost of these proposed improvements, the cost of the first variance, I don't think there's much equivalent to that. If it exceeds 50%, they'd have to go back to and get full approval for the project to meet current code?
That was actually a discussion early on in the project that, if I recall correctly, some initial correspondence with the applicant was that this was going to be a renovation and that the project would proceed to building permitting, and the question was raised regarding the process that was necessary. And because, of course, the value, as Mr. Brown points out, is much more for the renovation and the new construction than the 50% threshold based on the value of the current building. The project did have to go through the development plan review with planning and zoning board. And during the, excuse me, dry mouth, during the design process for development plan review, we discovered the setback limitation on the north side, which is why they came in for a variance the first time.
I have a question, and it's actually for council. And maybe I'm missing something here. As a Board of Adjustments, isn't our job just to determine whether or not these meet the criteria, and if they're not met? And, you know, I get it, I'm looking at some plans and things like that, but if the criteria is not met, the plans don't do me any good because the criteria is not met. So my point in saying all this is, I get the discussion, and I think it's nice, and I think it's fair, but on the other hand, it's either met or it's not. And I will say this, reading the packet, I really appreciated this time at least, because in the past it hasn't been, where the town actually gave us some guidance as far as meeting criteria and stuff, because a lot of times you kind of left it up to us, and it was kind of like, you know more than we do as far as these concerned. We're not engineers. That's not what we're here for. We're here just to look at it and say, did they meet the criteria of hardship, X, Y, Z, or not? And so therefore, I think, you know, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as my fellow board members, I think that's what we should be basing these granting variances on.
Yes, and Christy Gatto, as the town attorney, you're absolutely right. You have the criteria. This is quasi judicial, so they have to meet all of the criteria in order to be granted a variance. The staff's review and the memo that's in your backup, the application are all part of the record for today's hearing in addition to the testimony provided. So if that evidence presented to you as the decision makers does not satisfy all the criteria, then your decision would be to deny it. If you find that all the criteria have been met, then it would be an approval.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by board members? I now declare this quasi judicial hearing closed. We will now proceed with comments and deliberation by the board. Bob, would you like to start?
I oppose.
Okay. Benny?
I have a problem for the reason that I'm not real sure they met all the criteria, and we're getting huge variances other than, and we have variances in order to keep the town the quiet country town that it's supposed to be. And if we continue to have people that want to go way outside of the code, I think we're going to have real problems with construction in town.
Art?
Yeah, I'll be blunt. Surprise. I think that it does not meet the items that Victor pointed out, and I won't be blunt. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Obviously, since I'm the one that brought it up, it's something that I'm a very black and white person, as probably many of you already know in town. I've been here a long time. I look at any variance now, and I'll be honest with you, I think in the past, when I wasn't on the board, I think variances, and I agree with board member Bingham, that they were too easily given away, not passed or approved. And I think we lacked the judgment of just looking at the criteria. Do they meet the criteria? And in essence, if these things don't meet criteria, there's no need to visit a property. There's no need to do these kinds of things. It either meets it or it's not. And as far as I'm concerned, when I look at this one, if it doesn't meet the criteria, then go to the commission and have them change the codes. It's one of those simple things of, if we don't like it, let's change it and make it equal for everybody, or it doesn't get it. And so at that point, it's not something that I would approve of.
Send it back to planning and zoning, get them to change the
Exactly.
rules. That's the way I feel about it.
I agree. Totally agree with what you said. I think the code needs to be looked at.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, Bob, I think that a lot of the variances that we've had to discuss over the past number of years is typically for ordinances and codes that have become outdated and have not kept up with current times, just because of properties being built at an earlier time. However, these codes were just changed less than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So they're pretty recent, and it's not the duty of this committee to undermine planning and zoning. Right. The idea of this committee is to afford homeowners the option that are not enjoyed by outdated ordinances and rules. I'll now entertain a motion on this item. Do we have an item number that we need to include?
Item number 4.
4, I'm sorry. I'll now entertain a motion on item number 4.
I'll move to deny the variance for this applicant on item number 4.
Second.
Will the town clerk please take a roll call?
Member Slow?
Yay.
Member Martell?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Member Z?
Yes.
Kid,
Vice Chair Bingham,
Yay.
and Chair Hendon.
Yay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Occasionally. I'd like to move to item number 3, I believe it is. A quasi judicial hearing to consider a variance request for 26 Harbor Drive. Town clerk, please read the agenda item.
This is a continuation of an application submitted by Angel Darlene Johnson as owner for a parcel of property located at 26 Harbor Drive South, Ocean Ridge, Florida 33435, requesting a variance from the provisions of the Land Development Code, Chapter 64, zoning, Article 3, Supplemental Regulations, Section 64-1, accessory uses, buildings and structures generally, to permit a sun trellis to be located 2 foot 6 inches from the legal property line. The variance would allow for 2 foot 6 inch setback from the sun trellis, for the sun trellis from the property line, and a relief of 22 foot 6 inches from the 25 foot required setback.
At this time, any ex parte communication should be either disclosed by identifying the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, or any correspondence be provided to the town clerk and made part of the public record. In addition, each member of the board may identify the existence of any investigations or site visits he or she has conducted, or any expert opinions received, and disclose any conflicts of interest on this matter.
I visited the property there earlier this week, responding to an email that Ms. Johnson sent to me. And she showed me what she was requesting, and I said, thank you, and I left.
Great. Betty?
I visited a number of people in the area, and I think I gave you a letter that was written some time ago about one of the neighbors. And I looked at the property both from the north side and the south side. And I'm not going to disclose the names of people that I talked to, but I did talk to a lot of people. And
That live in the area.
what?
That live in-
That are live there, that have.
That live in the area, okay.
That live in the area that have to, be affected by this.
Okay.
Excuse me, I also received that email asking if I wanted to come by and take a look. Just the other day, I emailed back asking if I could. I received a phone call in response, not an email, at which time we only discussed visiting the property. I said that I would be interested in visiting the property. However, I did not want to have any discussion with the applicant, and they graciously agreed to that. So I went and spent like 5 or 10 minutes there. Thank you.
Excuse me.
I did not visit the property. I did not have any discussions with the applicant. I did seek some guidance from the town council and some other council that I know in the area that could give me some guidance as to, what's construed as a hardship and what things like that. So I got some information, but I didn't visit the property at all.
Okay, I received the same email. I had all intention of actually making a site visit. However, I was out of town and just couldn't make it into my calendar. So I did not visit the site this visit, but being that, again, this is a repeat variance application, I'm pretty familiar with the site from past discussions. We will then proceed with the hearing on this matter. Will the town clerk please swear in the witnesses?
Will anyone wishing to speak on this item, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
When you are called up to speak, please state your name and address clearly for the record and whether or not you've been sworn in.
The town staff will now make its presentation on this matter.
Good morning, Chair, board members, Corey O'Gorman, Town Planner. This is, of course, an item that was tabled at your meeting last month. There were several questions that came up at the end of the hearing, and there was some additional information requested, some of which is in the packet, information that was provided by the applicant, and I would defer to the applicant to review through that with you. One of the questions that did come up was regarding other screened porches in the area. And in order to try to address that question, we did a review of aerial photographs of the entire community and found approximately 6 homes that have screened porches around their swimming pools. From the records that we were able to find, it looked like most of them were constructed along with the home itself, built in the 60s or 70s. So there was no record of any building permits specifically for those screened enclosures, nor were there any variances that we could find. So I hope that's helpful in your deliberation. That was the one question that we were able to research and try to answer for you. And that concludes our presentation.
The applicant will now make its presentation on this matter.
Good morning, folks. Sorry about being late this morning. I left Port St. Lucie around 7:45, and when I hit Jupiter, it was just completely congested. I apologize for the time. Okay, so.
State your name. State your name.
Bob McAllister. At the last meeting, we had reached a point where the possibility occurred where we could go back to the original plan from a couple of years ago. So we had gotten those engineering drawings submitted in so that you folks can see those, as well as the set of drawings for the actual variance that we had put in. So just to remind everybody, we had been given approval to build the structure, and the posts that we had to use would be approximately 7'3" back from the property line. And when we came to build at that time, I was so grateful that we were given that permission, that we didn't realize that the one post that would fit on the deck, the other post would have been inside the pool. And we still were trying to make that work, but the cost to rip up the pool and put in a concrete footer down there and have the post actually be inside the pool, and then rip apart the deck on this side and put in a footer, it became almost $40,000 to put in a post. So what we requested in that variance was that we had 2 people from the city, correct? And they suggested that we put the posts out on the dock where the pilings were that had already met all of the approval for the Army Corps of Engineer, etc. And so at that last meeting, what we had adjourned on was, okay, let's take a look at that. Maybe we're going to have some folks come out to the house and let's see if there's another alternative. And that other alternative was before we were granted that variance for the 7.3, we had originally had planned on the posts being out at the edge of the deck. And
you can look at the pictures up here. You can see exactly where the planters are. That's where originally we wanted to put the post.
Those planters, which, darling, if you look inside the planter, there is a concrete footer. Okay, that footer is actually 2 foot by 2 foot and 2 foot deep, with number 5 steel rebar that actually went into the existing deck and the wall on the other side. Okay, that was where the original posts were going to go. So similarly, that's the edge of the planter. That's the wall of the bulkhead, and then that's the deck of the dock. And that's where she has that post, that's where the post would be. It would be mounted to the wall and to the dock.
Not the dock, it's a deck, it's a seawall.
No, it would be both. It's an L shape. It would be mounted to the bottom and to the wall as well. It would not just be mounted directly to the base, it would be mounted to the wall on both sides.
And if I could just say,
Can you
so.
speak in the microphone?
I'm sorry. So if I could just say, Jeff Pugh and Mike, the building inspector, they came out and that's what they recommended to us. This was the safest way to build it.
Hello, hi, Mike Crisafo, building official. I was asked to come out to the property, which I did. I looked at the plans and where the footers were gonna go.
Yeah, good to hear you.
Where the footers were gonna go is in the middle of the pool deck. I simply said, if you can do it, put it on the bulkhead. Why tear up the pool deck? But I also said, you gotta get approval, revise your plans and get approval. So I'm not designing the project, so that's what I said.
But it is the safest way to build it.
Thank you, sir. And what that was, you gentlemen just said to get the plans, to get that approved. Those are the plans that we had submitted for last month's hearing. So those engineering drawings represent the possibility of putting the posts out on the deck. And then the new set of drawings that were submitted in the past couple of weeks are the ones having it inside the planter. But they are not the ones, because the other set of drawings show the ones being cantilevered back. It is the homeowner's preference that it would be out on the dock, on the bulkhead.
Great.
Thank you for your consideration, really greatly appreciate it.
At this time, any other member of the public who wishes to submit relevant information to the board may come forward and speak for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Please indicate whether you are for or against the project or neither for or against the project. Will staff make their final comments?
Mr. Chairman, we have no additional information to add.
Just a question. I was not here at the last meeting, but I reviewed the minutes and there was something you wanted to see the consequences of putting the supporting structure onto the seawall. Or were we waiting for some information?
If I recall correctly, there was a question raised regarding whether or not the structure, the seawall itself could be utilized to support the structure because of permitting with the Corps of Engineers or
Right.
Department of Protection. I'm not aware that there's been any follow-up on that.
Did the Corps of Engineers has not inspected it?
That I don't know.
Or given any?
I think that may be a question for the applicant.
Right.
Sorry, okay. Yes, so two things. We went to the Army Corps of Engineers at the PGA office. Spoke with a gentleman there, very helpful, great. And if I may have permission, just talk straight. I don't want to say anything upsetting that's formal. He kind of laughed at me and he said, listen, this is, if you were asking us to build a bridge, in Boynton Bridge and then in Boynton Beach, that's something that we could address with you. But this is a question of the setback. That's not really for us. That's going to be a city call because all the work that had to be done originally for the approval for your dock was done by us, and we approved those pilings. And he had given me some PSI number that was insane. He said, so that thing could withstand a hurricane. I don't really care about it, but we're not really in the business of telling you about setbacks and easements. If the city wants to get involved with that and ask for a special permit from us, that's something that they could do. But in our channels, I said, well, can I get a letter or something saying that? I'm really not in a position to do that. And then we also contacted the DEP because we wanted to make sure that we covered all of our bases. And I showed them all the photographs and they said, look, there's no landscaping here. There's no natural foliage that's going to be in jeopardy. You're simply asking to put a post onto the dock that's already been approved and permitted. I said, yes, sir. So that was the question. Now, as to the viability of the dock itself having the wherewithal to withstand the structure, those drawings were engineered by an engineer using the engineered drawings of the dock with the pile. I think there's 6 concrete pilings holding up that dock that have been put into the seabed. And then, so the engineer did his drawings for that structure based on that dock structured engineered drawings that had already been approved by the Army Corps of Engineers. I know it's convoluted, but that's the sequence.
And if I could just say one thing, I have a fence on the seawall as well that has 9 different posts. So this is just asking to put 2 more posts. That's all we're asking for. Thank you.
Are those your final comments?
I think so, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, if I may, one thing I wanted to bring up, I asked the clerk to bring up an aerial of this area of town, which most board members are probably familiar with. But, obviously one of the criteria is hardship. And I just want you to see the aerial of the homes in this area primarily have little backyards, if at all, where it's just a pool or no pool and then a dock. So it is a similar setup to what's being presented.
Yeah, thank you. I think that we addressed that in the past, which resulted in prior approval.
Chair Hendon, can you put your microphone on, please? Thank you.
Sorry. Did you hear me?
I did.
I could repeat what I said. Do any members of the board have any questions for staff, the applicant, or anyone who has spoken on this item? Yes.
One question, because I'm sort of unclear on this. Does the applicant have approval to put in this, I don't know what you would call it, the
Sun trellis.
The sun trellis, approval to do that if the posts are in the location that are on top of the existing patio? Do they have that approval or not?
I'll have to check with the town clerk. I don't know if has it expired?
They currently have, I don't think it's expired yet, but they currently have a permit for the previously approved variance.
Okay, because I say that because at the last meeting, someone made a comment that they only had approval for the balcony and not for this. So, and I raise that question because if they already have the approval for the trellis that does not go as far as the board, that's not something we can reverse at this point in time. So what we're really, while some of us, may feel that, I think the screen enclosure itself, the trellis itself needed to be granted a variance. It appears that has been done. And so the only question that we can address is whether to extend it out with the hardship being $40,000 of costs. So am I correct that is the only option available to us right now? I would also add that you mentioned, we can't go back on this anyway, but you had mentioned that you found a certain number of properties that had a screened porch. I personally, when I looked, I did a quick aerial and I didn't see any with screen enclosures over the pool. Our neighbors have a screened in porch. I could screen in my porch, I'm assuming. So I just want to be clear that this would be the first, and already been approved, the first instance of putting an enclosure of some type over the pool.
This is not an enclosure. We never approved an enclosure.
It was never approved, and I was one of the caveats.
We're deliberating. Thank you very much.
I understand, but I think that if someone came forth now and wanted to put a screen enclosure, I don't see how you reject that.
No, two different issues. Two different issues. The applicant initially applied for a variance because due to hardship, because there was no way to shade the area
Yeah,
of the
they're
yard. And they had tried multiple attempts at different umbrellas and whatnot. There's evidently a windage issue here.
I would just, I'm sorry, this is off base, but I would also add that they already do it, the balcony created a shaded area for them, which is probably similar to what all the other properties have, but this is all irrelevant given what we have in front of us.
Correct. The balcony is, I think, a 5-foot structure. This is much larger than that. But the approval, and the reason I'm spending the time on it, Art, is the approval was based with the contingencies that the sides never be enclosed. Okay, it's strictly for overhead shade. Okay, because Betty had brought up there was an issue of any obstruction from neighbors' view if we allowed enclosures. So this is strictly a canopy that is adjustable, but the issues that's come up were engineering issues. How do you make this hurricane proof? And
Okay.
I have a point of clarification here. I respectfully don't necessarily agree with what Mr. Zeeb just said. Here's my, it's a question. If we're taking a variance that was approved to be within 7.5 feet from the setback, and now it's within 2.5 feet from the setback, that's a different variance. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So then the previous variance has nothing to do with this. We're looking at a variance that basically a brand new variance because something changed in the plans. And I'm just trying to clarify, am I wrong in that thinking or am I correct in that thinking?
You're correct.
Okay. So what was approved before doesn't make it mandatory that this has to be approved again or turned down again. It's just a matter of, let's just take it as if it walked in brand new.
Let me clarify, because I think we're on the same page.
Okay.
I'm saying that if we deny this one, they still have the right to build it that goes out the 7.5 feet setback.
no, that expired, I thought.
It did expire, but
No, it's still.
Well,
They
that's a bit-
renewed it.
Oh, they
They
did.
came back to you guys to renew it. It was then, they went to building permit, they have it issued. So they have a current building permit for the variance that was approved, renewed.
So
That's still active.
Okay.
They are just trying to revise that.
if the attorney and the planner would, so as I stated, if we deny this variance, they still have the legal right to build what was approved, which is the 7.5 that would put the post on the patio.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I didn't know that.
Betty?
I have a question. What is a permanent structure? And if you put the cement posts down and they're permanent, and you put a ceiling above it, are we not permitting a structure almost to the seawall? And are we going to completely ignore the setback requirements of our planning and zoning?
Mr. Chairman, that's really the request that's before you in a sense. It's not ignoring the setback. It's a request for a variance to the setback. And you're absolutely correct. This is a permanent structure. And that's why they need a variance in order to install it.
Do we as a committee just completely ignore the overall structures that are set up to try and protect the community?
Betty, you can
To
do
this
anything you
extent?
want.
I mean, we're talking about 22 feet.
I understand.
Okay.
And if I may clarify just a little bit, as y'all have discussed, this is essentially a new variance. So there would need to be demonstrated, or your findings, if you decided to approve it, would need to include that there are special conditions and circumstances that are peculiar to the land structure building involved in order to approve it. Or if you find that there are no special circumstances and conditions, then you would deny it. And as was stated, they would need to build it as previously approved.
I have a next question.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
wind and sun special exceptions, which is what we expect in Florida?
If they can be demonstrated to be unique to this particular property, yes, and if not, then of course, no.
I have a request for the town, and this is the perfect example of these types of situations. As you can see, the previous applicant this morning, it became a lot more clear because you gave us some guidance on the variance. And maybe in the future, obviously not for this one, can we get that similar type of guidance on every one of them? Because it makes it much more, or clarifies things much more so that we can actually kind of go, well, that makes sense or it doesn't make sense based on purely the criteria, which is all we really care about, correct? I mean, it's the criteria. Because that helps a lot. When we have it like this, we really kind of don't know what the town's thinking and whether, I mean, to me, this seems like the same situation as the previous one where if we're really concerned about this, we need to change the code again, and it's nothing wrong with changing the code. I don't necessarily have a favor or disfavor of this. It's just what the code says.
But there are unique situations that occur despite the code. And I think that's what.
True,
that's
but you
what
have
we
to go
do.
by the, you have to go by the criteria of the heart, whether or not, in other words, it's not like they if they don't meet one of those, you can still grant it. If they don't meet all the criteria, then it can't be approved. It's that simple. I mean, that's my understanding of a Board of Adjustments. Right.
Betty, it looks like you want to say something.
I think I gave you a letter where they objected way back. I don't want to reveal names that show how the code was or was not met by someone on.
Is there a letter on file with a neighbor?
Actually, if I could just say, I went to every single neighbor in the cul-de-sac and they all signed a letter saying that they supported it. So
Do we have a copy of that?
I have copies of it and I submitted it with the first variance that I went for.
Each variance is different. If you needed it, you need it for this variance. If you wanted to show the support, you have.
I still have all of those letters in a file. I can bring it up.
Chairman, Hendon, as I recall, for the first variance, there were some letters of neighbors in support of the first variance, but I think as it's been made clear here today, each variance has to stand on its own footing. And so what you're really looking at today is just what is being requested to extend further out into the rear setback. Obviously, the criteria does not take into consideration whether neighbors are in favor of this or against this. That's something that, obviously, as human beings, we all consider, but it's not presented to you within the criteria, and we don't have any evidence of that.
Well, Council,
this variance.
doesn't it indirectly apply when because it says in one of the criteria that there's no injurious to surrounding people within 300 feet? I mean, that's kind of.
It is, but at the same time, you're dealing with your neighbors.
Right. Yeah.
So I'll just leave it at that.
Excuse me, may I just offer one point of clarification?
Please do.
With the deliberation I overheard? Thank you. It's very, very simple. The trellis itself is 10 foot off the deck. Okay, so the trellis is 10 foot off the deck. Right now, the variance allows us to build it and put the posts 7 foot 3 inches back from the edge of the trellis. That's what's the request in the variance right now is that instead of having the posts be cantilevered 7 foot 3, that the posts be brought to the edge. There's no change of the trellis, there's no change of the balcony, there's no change to anything that's going on up there, just the post placement, which would be 7 foot, 3 foot from the edge, cantilevered off, versus to the end. And typically, you would build a structure with the posts at the end, but in this case, the original variance said no, put them there. Okay, just wanted to bring that to you. Nothing is changing, just the post placement.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
I just had a question. Initially, if the posts were going to be 7 foot 3 inches and one of the posts ended up inside of your pool,
No, they were never originally designed to be 7. They were always originally designed to be out at the end. They were always, and then.
If I could just refresh everybody, Mr. Guy was the person that said, no, we had to move him back.
You need to be at the microphone.
We did not propose it that way. This is what Mr. Guy wanted us to do, and he knew that it was going to be in the pool. So I just want to let everyone know that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some concern about how the neighbors think. And I would approve this under the condition that the neighbors support it. So at that point, I think we should just adjourn the next meeting and get some letters from them.
Well, let's do this.
I have a question, please.
Okay.
The plan as approved, are the supports in the pool or on the patio next to the pool?
No, it's in the pool.
What
pool deck?
One each. On the deck.
One on the deck.
I need you guys to speak in the microphone.
One side would be in the pool, the other side would be on the deck. And you cannot build it in the pool.
I would like to have that confirmed by the town's representatives as to whether that's factual or not, please.
Mike Christopher, building official.
Speak up, please.
Mike Christopher, building official. The one post, when I went out there to look at this, said, well, we gotta put a footer here. It's right in the middle of the pool deck. Not in the pool, but the deck. So that's why I said,
So
if
that,
you do it, put it on the bulkhead. But
right. So what you're saying is the existing plans, the footers, no footers actually go into the pool. They go into the pool deck.
I'd have to take the pool deck apart.
No, it's not the same.
I understand that, but there is not, the applicant was saying it's actually in the pool, which is not correct.
On one side it is.
Don't forget, the footer is a 2x2, so the post placement on the deck is right on the edge, but when you put that footer in, it would go into the pool. Sorry.
Okay, I didn't study it that closely, but yeah, it could be, but it doesn't make sense to me to put the post in the pool deck, but that's, it's the setback.
I have a quick question for you. Am I wrong in saying that this is from the beginning of the trellis to the end is 25 feet? Is that correct?
It's about right.
Okay. So wasn't there any way of designing this just shorter and just a cantilever? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out some solutions here so that nobody's out a lot of money and then nobody doesn't get anything that they want. I have an awning. My awning is 15 feet, 10 feet, something like that. And since there's no poles, because it's like when you cantilever, it doesn't require poles, which if it doesn't require poles, it's not considered a permanent structure. It seems like we're beating our head against the wall for something that could be solved fairly easily.
But this is, the shade is within the sun trellis. There's like,
No, I get it.
So
Yeah.
you have to build it for wind, and hurricane codes. So to that point, I applaud the design.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
So I think, given that we can say to them, can deny the variance, which then requires them to put the post into the deck. However, in order to get the proper size footer, they would have to do something to the pool. I think that's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so we're actually now at the position of, if we deny the variance, then it's going to be the residents, the applicant's decision whether to move forward with it, do whatever extensive work is needed on the pool, or basically we have in effect, if they don't choose that route, we have in effect said, I guess you're going to have to come up with another option. So that would then give us, I'll leave it at that. So those are our two choices: either allow them to build this trellis, or basically be saying, you can build the trellis, but only if it's going to cause you the work on the pool.
You had final comments. I need to move this along. So this was a question for building to staff, or is this discussion among us?
That was to let us know what our actual choices are here.
I think
Counsel?
in the building official who's present can correct me if I'm wrong, but the town building official never designs a project.
Correct.
What the town building official is, they provide their advice and their regulatory to make sure that the professionals hired by the property owner do their job. So this project, as it's been designed under the original variance, obviously has constructability issues. That's not really a town issue. That's an issue for that original variance that they got and that their professionals perhaps didn't really look at it. What the variance is before you today is whether you want to allow them to extend out further into the town's setback. And that's really your choice today. Whether or not this impacts the viability or constructability of the original variance, that's not really an issue for you today. You're looking at the criteria that's set forth in the town code and whether this variance, standing on its own, satisfies those criteria. That's really your decision in any variance, and regardless of what a prior board may have done or didn't do, this is your decision.
Has anyone on this commission talked to any of the neighbors in the area besides me?
I have not.
I did not, and
I had a conversation with, excuse me, I'm sorry, good news is I don't know the names, with one or two, because, you got two different things. You have North Harbor Drive, right?
Yeah.
And you have our street, South Harbor Drive, and people are affected differently. One would be, and this is me just giving you my opinion, one would be the people directly east and west of the property line on either side on Harbor Drive South, which would be possibly affected one way or the other. And then you have people across the water that are just basically would be a visual thing for them. But unfortunately, that's not even a criteria that we can base anything on. So it becomes irrelevant at that point.
This is a discussion for our board. Do you have any questions for any of the officials? Okay. I now declare this quasi judicial hearing closed. We'll now proceed with comments and deliberation between us.
I really am concerned about the neighbors and how they perceive the situation. And I would not vote for it at this point, but I would, if the neighbors accept the variance, then I would vote positively.
Okay. Betty?
I have talked to the neighbors, and I can tell you that there are at least, I don't want to say how many that object to it on both sides of the waterway. Because some it obstructs their view, some they have to look at it. And that's the reason I'm being as ornery as I am.
I'll wait till the vote.
Okay.
Even though I agree with you, Mr. Sloat, the issue is, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, the neighbors' opinions on it, again, just like the last variance that we just did, it's not part of the criteria, so it's not something we can take into account in order to change our vote. It's just literally their opinion. If we granted it to them and they'd be unhappy, but the applicant met all the criteria, they still get it. On the other side of it is, if they're unhappy and they don't get it, it's an irrelevant point to the vote only because it's not part of the criteria. And I certainly wouldn't tell you to wait to ask them and then change your vote, because it's not the way our quasi judicial structure is. It's just a matter, do they meet the criteria? Do they not? And that's really it.
And I would just add to, with respect to neighbors, they may be a neighbor today, but you don't know who the neighbor is going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road.
Or they may be nice now and not nice later.
Exactly.
Everybody's different. That's why you can't account for it.
I have an additional problem with this request, and even trying to change the setback to 0, setting that precedent, which other people are going to come and try to get the same variance of a 0 setback on their property line, which is really my major concern.
Well, to address some of the concerns that we have on the board, I think neighbors' opinions are important. I mean, that's what makes us a neighborhood. And although, to your point, it's not necessarily written into our decision-making process. However, I think we've dealt with a lot of these issues in the past. You know, as far as it has a very slimline appearance, not from above. Obviously, it's provide shade, but you know, from the neighbor down the road, I think it's a 2-inch trellis, you know, that contains the louvers. And now we're just talking about the supporting structure. Where do you put the poles? Do you put the poles 7 feet in or 2 feet in? And I look at variances as unique situations. We are not setting precedent here. Every situation that comes before this board is a unique situation. And I don't feel pressured as far as a member of the Board of Adjustment to say, oh, well, we granted him an adjustment, you got to give me the same one, because the situations are very different. But to your point, I would, and I hate to do this too, because this has been going on now for
3 years.
3 years. All right. If you have supporting documentation from your neighbors, and you said you still have this at home,
I can go get it right now.
well,
That's the previous variance.
I think that would help support your application. Okay. I don't even know if all those neighbors that you talked to are still there, or they're different neighbors or not.
It's a different question.
Yeah, absolutely. But I personally, considering the history of this project, the recommendations of the current project, the stability of adding the support system to the bulkhead, I think the supporting structures are what, 6 inch poles?
6 by 6.
6 by 6. That they do have a unique situation. Wind and rain are not unique to Florida, but the position of their home and the wind effect that they have encountered. This isn't their first attempt out of the box to provide shade for their yard. They have a huge front yard. They bought the home. They have a very small backyard. In order to make any of that space usable, some shade needs to be applied. I think this is, well, I think this is the best option that they've had. And I would personally support it as long as they have the added letters that they say they have from the neighbors.
I took the liberty to go around and talk to people that have umbrellas, and most of them told me, yes, if they left their umbrella up, it wound up in their swimming pool.
That's right.
But when the wind came up, they just they strapped the umbrellas down, and they don't have problems with them. And they have more problems with their furniture winding up in their swimming pool with heavy wind. This is not a unique problem.
I would also like that, if you're going to go back and want comments from the neighbors, they need to be newly signed letters, not the ones that are on the file.
Right.
The older letters.
Yeah, but some people said we would reject this anyhow, that's why they signed the letter.
My feeling is that the current neighbors are the ones that are affected, not future neighbors. It doesn't matter whether they sell their homes now or in 20 years from now. I think our decision should be predicated upon the neighbors agreeing with the project.
Under the stipulation of this new variance. So that would be a new letter, new signatures. Because what happened in the past is irrelevant to what's
I have
now.
to say something, I'm sorry, but we sent out,
The hearing's been closed.
we sent out
You-
letters to everybody, and they could be here to contest it if they didn't like it.
Mr. Chair, that's often an issue that's brought up. Again, I'll just go back to my previous comments. You're dealing with neighbors. Whether the neighbors want to come forward and support something or whether they want to just stay silent on it does not mean approval or denial. So the evidence before you is what Board Member Bingham has mentioned in terms of her initial investigation of it, we don't have any other evidence. That's what's been presented to this board for its decision today.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone like to make a motion on the board?
I move that we put this off for another month and try to find some kind of equitable solution.
I second that motion because I think it's important.
So it comes back in a month. What are we looking for?
I just need some current letters. I would approve it. But I am concerned about the neighbors.
Do you want to put a motion forward, Bob?
There's a motion and a second
Yes,
to table it.
motion and a second.
To table it.
To table.
Well, it should be, the
Not
motion should
table.
be more specific, to table it
Yeah.
with what stipulations within the motion so that we know what we're coming back to.
Do you want to amend your motion?
Yeah, you would table it. Yes, they come back with more letters from the neighbors are hard because they don't want to cause friction. But someone, do you want to make a motion? I don't know exactly how.
Whatever your amended motion is, I second it.
Well, no.
Well, we do have a motion and a second on the table. So we need to take a vote on the original motion to table this and find a more equitable solution. I believe was the motion that was seconded. So we do parliamentary procedure need to take a vote on that motion.
My personal feeling is the motion on the table is too obscure and nebulous, and I vote no. Art?
No.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, 3-2, it does not pass. I'd like to make a new motion that we table this for 1 month with the proviso that the applicant provide letters of support for the structure, current letters of support for the structure from her current neighbors, and we will then make a decision on the variance at that time.
I'd like to amend that to say, to obtain the neighbor's information and other information that may be relevant. I don't want to make it sound like it's just a matter of what the neighbors say.
And it should be people from both sides of the canal.
Well, it's within 300 feet, so even the other side of the canal would be 300 feet away, so.
Both North Harbor and South Harbor.
I think you need
Because
to
North Harbor
further
has to
motion
look at it.
Within 300 feet.
and accept a different motion.
That's the amended motion,
Yeah, the amended one.
okay?
So the motions on the table to table is for 1 month. Request current letters of support from current neighbors within 300 feet and other relevant information. That's the motion on the table. Is there a second?
I second it.
Can you take roll call?
Member Sloat?
Aye.
Member Martell?
Aye.
Member Zeeb?
Aye.
Vice Chair Bingham?
Aye.
Chair Hendon?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
May
So
I
moved.
please just have one last closing comment,
closed.
please?
The hearing,
It's
the hearing,
serious
we
issue.
can't take any more testimony.
It was up on the board. It just-
The hearing is over. It's been adjourned. We'll be back in a month.
All right, well, it addressed the comment.
So may I ask a couple of questions?
It was approved.
So
Nope,
do I need to go
It was
to
approved.
300 feet to every single neighbor? Or how many letters do you need? I would think the people directly across the canal
and the people on both sides of my
Because of the
property.
variance?
Would that
Because
be
of the,
enough?
So the motion was to get owners
2 feet.
within a 300-foot radius.
Well, we set that up to people.
That's what the board's motion was that they voted on.
How many letters do you need?
They didn't specify, it said that the 300 feet. So I recommend going to within a 300 radius. You can talk to the clerk, because that's usually our notice radius, so she can tell you what that
No, I said, I'm the one who pulled it, and we sent letters to every single person.
Christie's suggesting, go to all your members within 300 feet. Request letters.
Oh,